Okay, I'm a little late in the video because I had to take care of some stuff this morning, as we're now 6 weeks into the season, so now it's time for my Week 7 picks of the 2017 NFL season. And last week, oh my god, another terrible week once again, 7-7. As I'm not doing anywhere near as close as good as I did last year, unfortunately. I'm sure probably everyone else is having the same fate as well. And in the playoff picture, it's now the Chiefs and Steelers with the byes, with the Broncos going to the Patriots, and the Bills going to the Titans. And in the NFC, it's the Eagles and Vikings with the byes, with the Saints going to the Panthers, and the Packers going to the Rams. And with my Super Bowl pick, I think it's kind of obvious still going to be, I think maybe the Eagles might beat the Chiefs this time around, since I don't really see the Packers probably making a run for it now. Aaron Rodgers is probably going to be out for the year. So now let's get to my picks. We get things started with tonight's Thursday night game, as it's the Chiefs going to the Raiders. And of course, oh my goodness, the Raiders are still struggling big time this year. And Derek Carr did not look good all last week against the Chargers. He looked kind of nervous out on that field. And of course, the Chiefs finally fell, as we have no more undefeated teams too. Now, the Chiefs, normally in this time, the Raiders have revived themselves pretty much so far until this year. But for some reason, when they play the Chiefs at home, they never get their shit right. They haven't beaten them in Oakland since that 2014 Thursday night game when they got their first win that year. But ever since then, even though they got better, they kept getting spanked by the Chiefs for crying out. Matter of fact, ever since that Thursday night victory, they've lost every single game against the Chiefs for crying out loud. And the way they're struggling right now, and although the Chiefs lost, they still were somewhat competitive. They only lost by 6 points, I believe it was. So even though I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders somehow get the ship right and manage to get the victory, I'm picking the Chiefs this time around, especially since the last 2 years in a row, I picked the Raiders, and I kept getting incorrect every time, so I think it's time for me to pick the Chiefs finally. And then we get to the Sunday games, starting off with the Buccaneers going to the Bills for the first time since 2009, and only the second time ever they've gone there. And I think that it's still not sure yet if Jameis Winston's going to start yet, but it might be probable, so he might be playing, as they got destroyed by the Cardinals until Ryan Fitzpatrick came in, just like I predicted they were going to get destroyed. And the Bills, they didn't play at all last week in their bye, so they're probably fresh and stuff. And of course, the Buccaneers have been struggling so far this season. The Bills have been over-exceeding everyone's expectations probably so far this year. So I went back and forth from this pick throughout the entire off-season stuff. But I think it's kind of clear now that the Buccaneers have regressed so far this year. Or maybe it's just a trend that they've had the last 2 years where they start off slow, then get like really good in the middle, then collapse at the end. But I think I'm going to pick the Bills for this one. And it's the Panthers going to the Bears for the first time since 2012, I believe. As the Panthers lost a tough game against the Eagles last Thursday night, although Cam was terrible. Threw like 3 picks, I believe it was. And how about the Bears actually beating the Ravens for the first time in Baltimore too? I saw that was quite an impressive performance, especially that comeback that the Ravens tried to do. They definitely looked a lot better than they did against the Vikings. So now this is 2 games in a row now. The Bears, they almost beat the Vikings, even though Mitchell Trubisky struggled, and they then beat the Ravens. And matter of fact, I think he was the better QB that day. So Trubisky's starting to play a little bit better, and of course now he's got to play a tough Panthers defense. Although, if I remember correctly, the Bears have won 2 in a row now against the Panthers. Matter of fact, I think the Bears haven't lost to the Panthers since like 2008 or something like that. It's been probably like a while since they've last lost to them, especially in Chicago too. And of course, Cam's really kind of struggling still because he's been inconsistent so far this year. But even though that's the case, I won't be surprised if the Bears win it, but I think I'm going to take the safe pick with the Panthers. And it's the Titans going to the Browns for the first time since 2015, as the Browns try to avoid 0-7 for the first time since 2000. I mean, this first time, second year in a row, as the Browns, oh my goodness, Kevin Hogan shit the bed against the Texans last week. Wait, for like 3 picks or something like that? It was ridiculous. They should have probably done Cody Kessler instead as a starter. And the Titans had a very hard-fought game against the Colts last Monday night. I loved it too. Now, the Titans, I believe, have struggled against the Browns historically when they've gone to Cleveland. So, and the Titans do seem to be struggling a bit so far this year. So, you can't be surprised that the Browns somehow pull it off. But I think I'm going to pick the Titans for this one. But I will not be surprised if the Browns get it. Then we get to one of the big showdowns in the NFC this week, as it's the Saints going to the Packers for the first time since 2012. As the Saints, wow, 3 in a row now, and they've been dominant performances pretty much. Destroyed the Panthers at their place. Then shut out the Dolphins in London. And then they spanked the Lions until they came back. And then they managed to keep that comeback off in the end. So now 3 in a row. Now they got to go to the Packers, who lost Aaron Rodgers probably for a year. And Brett Hundley, I believe his backup was. He was terrible against the Vikings. But I think it's more probably because he didn't get to play at all last week. But the Saints haven't beaten the Packers in Lambeau since 2006. And right now, they look hot as hell at the moment. And with the Packers losing Aaron Rodgers for a while, I won't be surprised if the Packers get it, but I think I'm going to have to take the safe bet and pick the Saints. It's the Jaguars going to the Colts, as the Jaguars had a hard-fought game last week against the Rams, but just couldn't get in the end. And the Colts almost had against the Titans until they blow it at the end. And, of course, if y'all didn't know, Andrew Luck is probably not going to be playing this week either. The Colts are, trying to, hold him back from, practice and stuff like that. I think he has, a soreness in that shoulder, I believe it was. And, of course, the Jaguars, like I said, they've been back and forth. They win, then they lose, and then win, and then lose, win, lose. So it's that pattern that keeps going on and on. Now, you would think if that's the case, maybe you should pick the Jaguars, since the parents have been continuing on, maybe to get the win. And I mean, the Colts aren't necessarily that tough of a team, but the Jaguars haven't beaten the Colts in Indianapolis since 2012, I believe. And Jacoby Brissett's finally starting to look at least okay with that Colts offense. So, and of course, that Jaguars defense is going to be very difficult to battle, even if they're at home. So I won't be surprised if the Jaguars get it, but I think I'm going to pick the Colts here. And then we get to our third London game of the year, finally a 1 p.m. game too, as it's the Cardinals going to the Rams, as the Rams got that hard-fought victory against the Jaguars last week, and now they're matched their wins from last year total. And of course the Cardinals, they've ready the ship at the moment to stay at 3-3, and AP looked dominant last week too against the Buccaneers. 134 carries, that almost doubled what he had the entire season with the Saints so far. So he's definitely looked a lot better, and he was a major addition for the Cardinals. Now David Johnson's gone for the year, probably. So I think the Cardinals actually could be kind of a threat in the NFC West, and possibly a threat for a playoff spot now. They might get that ship right. And of course the Rams, they have pretty much no defense still at the moment. That offense, although good, has been kind of inconsistent. So you kind of got worries for that. Whereas the Cardinals, their defense is still good. And now that they got AP, as long as they keep feeding him the ball and not having Carson Palmer throw so much and maybe make so many boneheaded decisions, I think I'm going to pick the Cardinals for this one, especially since it's been since 2013, I believe, since the Rams last beat the Cardinals at home. And then it's the Jets going to the Dolphins, as the Jets lost a hard-fought game against the Patriots last week. And the Dolphins, wow, they actually beat the Falcons when they were down 17-0. That was quite impressive now that they've won 2 in a row. Maybe the Dolphins finally got their ship fixed at the moment, whereas the Jets finally probably peaked at the moment. And of course, although the Jets embarrassed the Dolphins earlier, I won't be surprised if the Jets somehow get, because they've had some pretty good history against the Dolphins in Miami, but I think I'm going to pick the Dolphins here. We get to the final 1 p.m. game, as it's the Ravens going to the Vikings for the first time since 2009, as they're going to make their debut in that new stadium as the Ravens. What the hell? Blowing that game against the Bears like that? That was terrible. And of course, the Vikings getting that very needed win against the Packers. And I got a message from all the Vikings and Lions fans that watch this too. You better not blow this. Now that Aaron Rodgers is down, you got a perfect opportunity, either of you, to win the NFC North. You can't blow this. Don't be like the Lions and Bears were in 2013 when Aaron Rodgers went down, and they still couldn't win the division. They let the Packers get it in the end. So don't fuck this up if you want to get this perfect opportunity. Now for the pick, the last time the Ravens played at the Vikings, they almost pulled it off. It won for that Kauska missed field goal, for crying out loud. That was pretty embarrassing how they blew that one. And of course, the Vikings defense definitely has been more consistent than the Ravens defense in their offense. Oh, that's right. I think Teddy Bridgewater might be maybe playing this week, so that'll be a big chance for big upgrade for the Vikings if they get that, since he hasn't played like in almost 2 years. They really need him back. So I think the Vikings will get this one. Then we get to the 4 p.m. games, starting with the Cowboys going to the 49ers for the second year in a row, as the 49ers tried to avoid 0-7 for the first time since 1979. And of course, the 49ers did have a hard-fought game against the Redskins last week. They just couldn't get in the end. And the Cowboys are off their bye week. For all of you that don't know, Ezekiel Elliott actually had his suspension upheld again, so he was going to face the whole 6-game suspension, but now it's been on hold again, so he's going to be playing this week, so that's good for the Cowboys. Hashtag free Zeke. But of course, they've been struggling this year, and remember, they barely beat the 49ers last season too, if you remember. So even though Zeke's going to be in, that's going to be a major help for the Cowboys. And I do think they're going to win this one, but I won't be surprised if the 49ers somehow pull it off. Although they've been very inconsistent. The 49ers have like flipped so far this year, where they used to be like really good at home. Now it's like they're really good on the road for some reason. And then we get to our first flex game of the year, as it's the Bengals going to the Steelers, as this was originally going to be at 1, but they moved it to 4, as the Bengals are off their bye week after that 2 wins in a row, although they did not look, Andy Dalton particularly, did not look really good against the Bills at the end. And the Steelers got that hard-fought, needed victory against the Chiefs last week. They looked a lot better that time around. As, oh boy, this might be tough, since now the Bengals are going to be facing a really tough opponent now. Although they do have, actually, believe it or not, a better history at Heinz Field against Steelers than they do even at their own home, so maybe they could probably pull it off, perhaps. But in the end, I think the Steelers are going to win this one. Probably put the Bengals back in their place for the season. Then it's the Broncos going to the Chargers, as the Broncos are going to play in LA for the first time since 1994. And what the hell, Broncos? How can you blow that against the Giants like that? Holy crap, that offense completely collapsed. They were so bad, I was wondering if it seemed like the Broncos and Giants like flipped, for crying out loud. That's how bad they were playing last week in the Chargers. 2 wins in a row, not bad, especially against 2 teams that everyone thought was going to be like a playoff team and stuff like that. On the road, too, that was pretty impressive, although you still have yet to win at home. So, and of course, the Chargers, remember, won that game last time around. They were pretty good in that game, too. And they almost beat the Broncos earlier this year, too, so the Chargers cannot be messed with when you're the Broncos, so I won't be surprised if the Broncos somehow pull it off, since Phillip Rivers has been inconsistent, stuff like that, but I think I'm going to pick the Chargers for this one. And it's the Seahawks going to the Giants for the first time since 2013, as the Seahawks are off from their bye week, and the Giants, that dominant victory against the Broncos last week, that was pretty impressive too. And of course, they still have no one on the receiving core. Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, I think, is still suspended. Eli Apple, I think, is still suspended. So your 2 good corners, probably not going to play that week, especially since that's your main advantage against the Seahawks, is making Russell Wilson make terrible throws. So this game's probably going to be defensive and stuff too, if you think about it in the end. Although, who you trust more, LOB or the Giants' decimated defense, or Russell Wilson or Eli? Even though Russell Wilson struggled, I definitely trust him more than Eli. So I won't be surprised if the Giants somehow pull it off, which I pretty much thought the entire season they were going to do. But I think the Seahawks will get this. And then we get to Sunday night, and we finally get our Super Bowl 51 rematch, which should have been Week 1 instead, when all of them were fresh, as it's the Falcons going to the Patriots for the first time since 2009, where they have not won there since 1998 when they were back at Foxborough Stadium, as the Falcons have entered full hangover mode now, losing 2 in a row against the Dolphins and Bills when they had the lead at the end, pretty much until they blew it. And they've only scored 17 points in each of the last 2 games. That's half of what they scored last season, for crying out loud. This team is definitely struggling, especially since they don't have no pass rush at the moment. And of course, the Patriots finally look like they finally fixed that defense, as now they won 2 in a row and took the lead in the AFC East. And I don't think it's probably going to be close. I think the Patriots are going to easily get this one. Now we get to the Monday night, one of my favorite Monday night games of the year, which I wish it would be next week for me, as it would have been on my B-Day, as it's the Redskins going to the Eagles, and probably the deciding game for the NFC East. Now, of course, the Eagles, they could probably wrap it up pretty much at this point. I mean, the Giants have fallen way back where I don't think they're going to be able to make a really good comeback. They had to make one hell of a miracle to make it back in contention to win the NFC East. The Cowboys, maybe they can finally get on the run possibly and challenge the Eagles. But if they lose against the 49ers, which is still, I think, a possibility, and the Eagles beat the Redskins, I think the Eagles are going to wrap the NFC East all up unless they do one of the most epic collapses probably in franchise history along with that 1994 season. And of course we saw in week 1 when the Eagles embarrassed the Redskins in FedEx Field. And these teams are actually kind of even too. They got solid QB play and they got really strong, well not strong. Well, Eagles case good defense, Redskins good too, but they both get a lot of pressured stuff, but I mean, if the Redskins can let that much of a beating happen to them at their home place, how are they going to do well against the Eagles? Now, sure, they've won 2 in a row against them, and the 2 games beforehand. Matter of fact, the Redskins actually have a win record against the Eagles in Lincoln Financial Field since 2012, but I don't think it's going to be the case as well. I guess I won't be surprised if the Redskins somehow get it, but I think the Eagles are going to easily get this one and get closer to wrapping up maybe the NFC East. So those are my picks for Week 7. I can't wait for Chiefs at Raiders tonight and all the other games, especially Sunday night and Monday night. So tune in next week for my Week 8